you know what? Why don't we try something a little different? Why don't we, if everybody wanted to be on camera, why in the hell not? Let's try it. It is the Outliers Inn, after all. All right, so today my co-host is going to be Don Burshnick, okay? Because for some reason or another, David didn't register for this, so my usual co-host is MIA. Welcome to the Outliers Inn, produced by the Operational Excellence Society and sponsored by Zonotech Consulting Group International, with your hosts, Joseph Paris and David Schneider. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Outliers Inn. I'm your host, Joseph Paris, and today's stand-in co-host is Don, the Beer Man Burshnick. How you doing today, Don?
Great, Joe. How you been?
Not so bad. So we got a little bit of a broken play today, but you know what? It is the Outliers Inn, so we're just going to roll with it. And people that want to have cameras on, will do cameras on, and it'll just make for the post-processing editing a little bit more interesting. But what the heck, right? You give it a whirl.
Throw a chance to the wind.
Absolutely. So, today's theme, Don, is time wasters. And, I've seen you brewing your beers. And I know there's a lot of wasted time there, especially when your son doesn't show up on time. But there's all these different things that are stones in our shoe, all right? Things that just slow us down, get in our way, things that are a lot more difficult than they should be. Can you resonate with that? Oh, yeah.
Across the board, it's sometimes it's trying just to get some of the little things done that, like I was saying, dealing with customer support sometimes. Try and get a call to somebody, you're sitting there waiting on the phone for 45 minutes, trying to get just a little issue resolved. And there's 45 minutes gone out of your day. You got an 8-hour day. That's a good chunk.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it, it's tax season, right? I mean, our taxes are due in the next couple of days. And if you've ever tried to call the IRS for anything, you're on what I call Kevorkian hold. Dr. Kevorkian, Dr. Death, helped people with assisted suicide. I mean, that's what you feel like. You're on the phone forever with the IRS, just on hold. And most people, statistically speaking, I just read this recently, but it's like 70% of the people that call in just hang up. They give up.
Oh, yeah.
And our accountant back there in the States, whose name I shan't share, he wanted to call up the New York State Tax Authority when I was shutting down a business and moving it to Wyoming. And he wanted to expedite it. And he said he might be on hold for like 3 or 4 hours. And it's like, Tom, I'm not going to pay you for 3 or 4 hours of you sitting on hold. I mean, that's non-value add, that's just not going to happen. And he says, well, if you don't do this, then they could dissolve your company. And I said, Tom, that's what we're trying to do. Right. So, what the heck, So, yeah, there's all sorts of time wasters. But I think what we really should do, start off with opening up a beer, this precious beer we've been saving for some time.
Which one do you got there?
What's that?
Which beer do you have?
We have the Gummy Beer.
Oh, that's the Gummy Bear.
The Gummy Beer.
He just did another one too.
You didn't tell us to bring our own beer.
Well, it's the Outliers Inn. It's going to be, all legal beverages are acceptable. So here is the Gummy Beer. It's rather green in color. And Sam already had it. Sam, it doesn't look too flat. You said yours is flat. Mine doesn't look too flat. It had a head. So, Prost.
Prost. I can't drink. Too early in the day.
Time only stands still at the airport, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's there's no time of day. There's only time of flight at the airport. So, what do you think about that, Stephane?
Speaking of the airport, something time waste. I never ever understood why you have to show 10 times your passport, why you cannot just, do all at once, do the checking, check your luggage, check your back in the X-ray, go to the border all at once, and that's it. No, you have to go first, get your boarding pass. No, you speak to a machine, but at the time. You put your bag into a system, and then you go to security, and then you have again to show you a boarding pass. And before going to security, you have to show again that you are in fact taking the flight and scan your ticket again. So I think you scan your ticket 4 times at the end, if not 5 times. And I wonder why they never managed to streamline that business.
Well, chances are that we could probably bitch about airports all day long. I just went to the States a couple of weeks ago, and when I got to the one checkout area or check-in area, getting into United was no problem. Getting the boarding pass was no problem. And then I have to go through like passport control and security. And I get upstairs and there is a line. No shit. There's like 400 people in this line. And I'm like, this is unusual. And fortunately, it must have been a Lufthansa thing because I was flying United and they called out United and we got passed right through. But then I was sitting in the passport control line for there's like 100 people there. And how many passport officers do they have checking passports? One friggin' passport control officer checking 100 different, passports. I get through, and then of course there's security, and they only have a couple of lanes open for security. I get through that. I got up a bottle of scotch for my visit for New York, as I usually do. And I'm going to go to the Lufthansa lounge, and guess what? There's another line. There's like 50 or 75 people in that line. So I said, forget this. I'm just going to go to the gate. And there's got to be a better way. And I think that's kind of a theme, isn't it? Like if we ever find ourselves wondering that there's got to be a better way, I could almost guarantee you there is. That's.
I told you the story about leaving Mexico, didn't I? The last time I was down there?
No.
Well, the flight was scheduled to leave at 9:15, and the flight wasn't even there yet. So we're waiting and waiting. And finally, you see the jet comes in, parks, and we're all getting in our lines and stuff. And then the jet's sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And I see him bringing up the stairs, and they can't get the stairs line. You see a guy out there pounding on the stairs with his hand. I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And then in 30 feet in back of them, there's another set of stairs. So they're sitting there continually to fight with this one stair. Some guy's down there pumping on something down at the bottom and stuff like that. This goes on for almost 45 minutes. Now, I got a short connection in Mexico City. It's not good. Finally what they did was they brought another set of stairs over to empty people out of the back, and finally took that one away and brought the other one up and started emptying people out.
Crazy. So listen, we have a new visitor to the inn. Stephane, how you doing today? Oh, you got to. There you go.
Oh yeah, I saw your email. It sounded like an interesting topic, so I thought I would drop in.
Yeah. So what did you find interesting about it?
Or just time wasters. We all have the stories, and so I thought, all right, maybe there's some creative ways to navigate around, time wasters and how to advocate for more efficiency inside the company.
Yeah, but the first thing you have to do is you have to recognize that there is a time waster, isn't it? And that's kind of a challenge, and then people figure out 100 different ways of why you shouldn't improve it or why you can't improve it. Right. Do you have any specifics in mind there, Stephane?
I go by Steve. Keep it
Steve.
Simple. I recall trying to change a phone number on an app, and I couldn't change it. Countless times calling the customer service. Hours go by, of course, right? And they said, "Well, did you put a 1 in front of the number?" In the U.S., we don't put a 1 in front of our number. It would never accept. My area code and phone number. You had to actually put a 1, and nowhere did it tell me that I wasn't putting a 1 in, nor did it ever show me what the right format was. And I just used that as a story inside the company, is that don't let us get this big and dumb, right? If somebody in that organization should realize that we don't have the right error message, we don't have the right instructions. If you get a call into customer service and the customer's confused, don't just answer their question, go fix the problem, under the systemic problem.
Right. So how about you, Sam? What are your favorite time wasting stories?
Well, I mean, being in the work I am, then I guess, my favorite time waste is the one I get paid to remove. But I think you raised an interesting thing, which is, in big organizations, I think the general challenge is that for every time waste that one of us wants to remove, there is somebody whose job or whose tiny empire depends on that inefficiency remaining. Like we allow ourselves to build organizations that become so bloated with inefficiency that people have their entire careers hinging on inefficiency. They're hinging on, on executing a process that's no longer effective or even necessary. So I think that's my general observation, that the challenge is bigger. We spoke a little, we touched upon this subject last time, actually, Joe, when we talked about, the new upper and working class, and how some people may actually build their comfortable careers just on the fact that they are the ones who can let you through the time wasters.
Yeah, it's funny. I was with a client a couple of weeks ago, and they one of the senior execs made a remarkable statement that 80% of his time is non-value add. Now, could you imagine a senior exec sharing at a workshop that I was conducting that 80% of his time was non-value add? I mean, it was remarkable, because to me, that was like the ultimate time wasters. And so I asked him, I didn't ask him at the workshop because I knew that it could probably consume the rest of the day. But I made a point of calling him later. And sure enough, he showed me the Outlook analytics that you can get. And it showed that over the previous 4 weeks, he had attended 147 meetings. Now think about that.
The minutes are kept and the hours are wasted.
Think about it, and so I started probing, what were the nature of these meetings, and really what it was, and this is a government agency or quasi-government agency, and what it was is that they had grown rapidly, and most of the meetings were to make sure that everybody else was doing their job right. Okay, so it was control, and I'm like, why don't you just hire competent people and let them go? Hire them, train them, make them on board, and then start managing by exception. Why do you have all of these meetings just to make sure that all the people that you're delegating stuff to are doing their job right?
That was, that email, that's what did catch my attention, that quote. And I often say that half of my job is deflecting the noise so other people don't hear it.
Yeah. That's really true. I mean, and you got to wonder what kind of corporate culture you have if people are always second guessing your work. It gets to the point, I believe, where people stop making the decisions because either they're afraid to make the decisions or act, or they'll know somebody else will come along and tell them how to do it. Basically, I'm hiring somebody so that I could do their job, instead of hiring somebody to let them do their job. It was really quite mind-boggling, but I get it, because when you're a small organization, you're growing, and especially if you're growing fast, things could get out of control, spin out of control pretty quickly. However, it gets to a point where you just have to, make sure that, you're balancing the control mechanisms with the ability for people to do their just native jobs. So
I think you see a good example of that from a friend of ours who's has to deal with the Toyota management system on a regular basis. You know who I'm talking about. And I mean, it's so layered in management and stuff, and they're so layered in meetings and all this. These different people have to make a decision on, an assembly that costs $40. It's not, what's your ROI on this? What are you saving, by letting somebody, hey, okay, so you're going to make a mistake on a, 25-cent part, and you're going to build 40 of these things, and, how much are you going to spend and how much time you're going to spend in meetings and everything else like that. I mean, streamlining the process and putting, like you say, putting people in there that are, competent to do the job, and make decisions. instead of having to go through all the bureaucracy.
One of my friends and colleagues works for Royal Dutch Shell. And in his meetings, what he would do is he would put in a spreadsheet that would run in the background, he would put in who was attending and what their burden cost was. And when the meeting started, he had a little clock like in the top, but it wasn't showing time. It was racking up dollars based on the time spent there for how much that meeting was costing, based on all the participants. And it was a pretty, he really snapped into focus. Well, what is value and what is non-value? Stephane, you work in a pretty big organization. What's your meeting workload like?
Mine is not too bad because, I decline meetings. But I can see some people, liking to go to meetings because, at the end of the day, this is a way to spend your workday. So it depends. And depends, I think, is done to individuals. I don't think it's done to cultural organization. But I went to meetings, when there were 13 people and 5 contributed. I counted. So you can know what the 8 were doing, yeah. Information.
Yeah.
Of course, they can read the minutes as well. So you wonder, how much they could learn from sitting in the meetings for now.
Yeah, the gentleman that that shared 80% non-value time, I gave him some guidance. I said, listen, in every meeting that you go to, just jot down what the meeting's about, what value you received and who you received it from, and what value you gave and who you gave it to. Because if you're just sitting there and you're not contributing and you're not getting, the question is, why are you there? Listen, before I forget, because I don't see him on the screen here, but I know he's standing on the by there. Grizel, you still there? You want to join in? Share us your favorite time waster?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can hear it loud and clear.
I think from the stories that I heard, I can relate to all of them.
Oh, good. Do you have any pet peeves or particular time wasters that drive you insane?
It's probably too much red tape or redundancy in processes.
Yeah, the red tape is kind of irritating, isn't it? I mean, anybody that's ever gone and had their license renewed, or pretty much any interface with a government agency, I made the pet peeve of having to deal with the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, it's very, very challenging to get to the right person, and then when you get to that right person, the answer that they give, you can't count on it as being the true answer, and. I don't know. I know there's a couple of people here that understand or have dealt with the Internal Revenue Code, but it is quite complex, and complexity kills. And you have these people that are trying to do the right thing, but they're just thwarted at every turn. So, what do you do when you encounter, Grizel? What do you do when you encounter these stones in the shoe that suck time? Oh, did we lose?
I think in most cases, I try to solve the problem myself. But going back to, someone mentioned this before, someone that might be in customer service and might not be able to provide the service needed and doesn't know how to fix it, they should go ahead and manage that up and fix it. And I think that's, in an organization, if there is no sense of ownership, then you don't really achieve that, right? So that person has to feel like they owned that process, or they own that, part of the organization to actually make the move.
Yeah.
If not, they're just waiting for instructions.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
That's one of the things that we did when down in production. We had to, we broke it down, and I put people in responsibility. This is your responsibility. It's nothing major, but it's just so to prevent them from having to come to me all over 5 seconds and, ask for permission to do it. Just do it. If it's wrong, oh well, we'll fix it later. But, they also had, a firm process that they had to follow and stuff like that when they were doing it. So, but we ran pretty smooth. Our efficiency went through the roof. You just empower people to do it. Now, that's the easiest way.
Yeah, it's difficult to, it's easy to say empower. It's difficult to let that and release that power, you know?
I have no problems with doing that. I've never had any problems with doing it. It's just too much.
I mean, one of the things I coached this organization with the 147 meetings, I said, instead of meeting about what people are doing, why don't you, leave the office and go see what they're doing? You know what I mean? To, just, a lean term, go to the Gemba, right? The real place.
Right.
It's like, if you don't understand enough about what your people are doing, that you have to have these meetings, maybe you should go down there and have the meetings on the floor, where the action is, where bring what is far near, or what is near far. And I just don't understand why, I guess, some people like their ivory towers,
I see a lot of that with management today. I know I discussed this with Dan, and I go over this a lot. A lot of times, what's happened in the past is, that people get into management as they grew through the ranks. Now they get out, they have an education, and they pop them into management. They have absolutely no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing personal against anybody, but it's obvious with dealing with a lot of them that they're aloof to it. They don't get in the process, get your hands dirty a little bit, and find out what's going on.
Yeah,
that seems to be the going trend.
I think it also comes with how people move up through the ranks. Like, me, if I get too far away from the shop floor or from the pointy end of the stick, whether it's a shop floor or hospital floor, it doesn't really matter. But if I get too far removed from that, I get restless. I mean, I like to see the action. I like to see the kinetic energy. I like to smell the machine oil.
And you want to make sure that you're there to let people know that if they need anything, you're there to support them.
Right.
That's the big thing.
Well, just to remain relevant. But I think sometimes now the leadership is coming right out of university, and then they're not getting their hands dirty.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think we have to let people get their hands dirty. You know what I mean? See what really is going on instead of looking at spreadsheets all day and data all day.
that was just my next comment. Spreadsheets. Yeah.
So what about you, Stephen? What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I was actually taking a note here, picking up some good tips. I missed that his last comment, but persistence is the key. I just wanted to emphasize that, and we need to empowering. If you're in an organization where employees don't feel empowering to furthering Don's point is actually rewarding, because they don't want it. They're afraid to make a mistake. So you don't really, if you empower them, you actually don't have anything to worry about. You actually have to push them and say, making a mistake is okay and expected, and you're going to learn. You learn more from your mistakes. So don't worry about it. It's actually, though, it's psychological. People are so afraid to make a mistake that about empowerment.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been at a couple of sites recently, and it almost gets to be like Stockholm syndrome, where the leadership is abusive to the point where they're stifling. I don't mean like whips and chains and stuff like that, but they're mentally stifling. And even if there's a change in leadership, they've now been conditioned and they don't believe in the new way. All right. And I have a favorite CEO of a credit union. I forget, like they manage, $7 billion or something like that. And he is the salt of the earth kind of guy. I mean, one of my favorite CEOs, if not my favorite. And the CEO before him of 15 or so years was very autocratic. No decision was made without that person's signature being on it. And, this new CEO comes along, who's the antithesis of the previous. And to get the people to believe in the new way is his biggest challenge. I mean, he's there, he walks the talk, but the people have been conditioned. Like I said, like almost like Stockholm syndrome, where they become dependent on their abuser, and it's really, really difficult to break that.
It's a cultural shift.
Yeah.
It's a cultural shift. They have to learn to do a different culture. They're just not used to it.
All right.
And especially if there's a lot of turnover in management, you got a lot of turnover in management, and people come in and do something different. And the next guy comes in and does something different. All they know is they just sit back and watch it happen.
Right. Right.
You know,
Right.
they know you're going to be gone shortly.
What about you, Steph? Oh, you have something to say, Sam? Sorry.
I just wanted to link back to my previous point. I think that this is actually an even bigger challenge than we are making it out to be, because it's not just that the CEO for the past 15 years have set the culture. He has also hired people who thrive in that culture, because if you don't thrive in an autocratic environment, you are going to be out very quickly one way or another. So it's not necessarily just that you have to get people to understand that it's okay to make mistakes. You also have to actually clean up a lot of the processes, a lot of the decisions, maybe a lot of layers of middle management who were hired to clamp down on anybody making decisions without asking the big boss.
Yeah.
So it's not just about making people believe, which is a big enough challenge. It's also about actually making people want to make that change. If they're a customer, I've been rewarded for 15 years for making sure that you don't make decisions without checking with the big boss. That's a hard habit to break. You might not even want to break it.
Yeah, that goes in with changing corporate culture, and that's hard, really hard, because it's just so ingrained into people, like Joe was saying.
You know, it was funny. I had this project several years ago. In fact, I paraphrased this in my book. I was walking around a campus with the CEO of a company, and we got to this, little park or whatever it was on the campus with a bench, and we're sitting there and we're just, chatting about everything. And he starts complaining that his OpEx program hadn't made as much progress as he'd like it to have made. And I asked him why. I said, why do you think that is? And he looks at me and he says, it's because, and it's not just because of the OpEx program. He says, it's because I'm surrounded by the lazy and the stupid. And I said, wow. I said, is that your corporate policy? And he's like, is what my corporate policy? I said, is it your corporate policy to hire the lazy and the stupid? I mean, is that what you set out to do? He's like, no, absolutely not. I said, okay, well, maybe it's HR's problem. HR goes out to hire the lazy and the stupid. And he's, no, we go out and we find the best and the brightest. We hire the best out of university. We poach the rock stars from our competitors. We hire the best and the brightest. I said, well, how is it that you hire the best and the brightest, but you're surrounded by the lazy and the stupid? How is that possible? And he was like, he didn't have an answer. I said, it's because you and your corporate culture grind them into the cogs that they are today. There's no other answer. I mean, just think about it. I mean, you can't use alchemy to take somebody and make them into something else. I mean, this is the way, their corporate culture was. And it's almost from the time now, not this particular client, but it's almost from the time you're hired. Okay. Think about the first day that you're on your present job. All right. And compare your level of enthusiasm and energy to today. Okay. Do you have that same level of energy and enthusiasm? It's probably worn off. You think about the honeymoon period. Everybody's got the honeymoon period, the last, maybe 6 months or so, but it really starts eroding on day one when you're hired. Okay. And you have to sit with HR and you have to fill out a bunch of forms. And you have to watch a bunch of videos and, just ask Dan about this. Right, Don?
Yeah.
And, and then you're introduced, to your manager, and your manager, the manager, instead of, teaching you the ropes, hands you off to some underling who teaches you all the shortcuts. These are the processes, but if you really want to get your job done in time, these are all the shortcuts. And it's sort of like, the whole system is corrupt. And you end up with the lazy and the uninspired.
Yeah. I think you can sum this up in kind of a nutshell. If you're looking at where the conversation's gone to, you're looking at time wasters. I think we've narrowed down a focus that a lot of bureaucracy is what our time wasting is.
Yeah.
And the way that corporate culture is set up is wasting a lot of time.
I had to activate a credit card today. A replacement credit card. Very easy. You dial a number, you type in a bunch of numbers, and next thing you know, it's all activated. But there was a few years ago, I had an account with Wells Fargo, and there's a little note on the back of the payment stubs that you put in there. If you have a change of address, what's your change of address? So for like 6 months, I'm putting in this change of address on my little payment stub. And for 6 months, they never make the change. And all of a sudden, of course, now I'm not getting the statements, and I'm trying to get the statements. And so I call up customer service, and, I get routed to some foreign land, and the person on there is asking me for information, like what was the last charge? And I don't have the statement, so I can't tell you what the last charge was. And I'm going around and around. And I'm giving them all the other information, trying to prove who I am. And they can't change the address. And then they have the gall at the end. So have I helped you today? It's like, no, you haven't helped me at all. So I get off the phone with that person. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call new accounts. So I call up Wells Fargo new accounts, and I get to a person. I said, the first question I asked, I said, this is going to be kind of an odd question. I said, I need to know if you're a card-carrying member of the U.S. Social Security system. And they said yes. And I said, great. And I explained my plight. And she says, well, what's your address? And I gave her the address. And I said, what do I have to do to get it changed? She says, it's been changed. I just changed it. So sometimes the moral of the story is sometimes don't call customer service, call new business.
Yeah.
They put their A team on new business.
Note that one down in the notepad there.
That's a little helpful hint from your Uncle Joe.
Yeah,
So,
really.
Joe, it's a classic example because what happened is one time somewhere in the past, a fraudulent customer called in and got a statement redirected. So the company made the decision that's never going to happen again. Every check and balance so that scenario doesn't happen again, and everybody gets penalized.
But Stephen, you and I both know that you can't idiot-proof a system, because along will come a new and improved idiot that's going to overcome the system.
Yeah. Yep. And then they'll put in another procedure, right? That you got to double verify, authenticate, triple check, and your address never, so the good people go delinquent or they get inconvenienced because we have layers of policies that are.
And next thing you know, we have to take our shoes off at the airport. Right?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just see it. You see those microcosms in business, and nobody had. There's not enough. Where business is turning into government, right? Because government keeps pushing down these policies and requirements, and we just become more and more compliance rather than efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good one. Sexual, you got that in New York State, sexual harassment training.
Yeah.
If you got over 49 employees, you got to give them sexual harassment training.
Yeah, because if we check that box and then sexual harassment goes away.
Yeah,
right.
I'm an advocate for training. Don't get me wrong, but
So Grizel, we don't want to ignore you here. What else would you like to share? Do you have any particular pain points that irritate you more than others?
No, I really have nothing else to share at this point. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. No. So I think this has been a pretty good session. What do you think, Don?
Yeah, it's worked out pretty good. Yeah, a lot of conversation going back and forth.
Yeah. And what do you think about the beer? Most important, Stephane, what do you think about the beer?
The beer is very good. I think I agree with some statement. It started to be a bit flat. I think probably, kept it cold in the fridge, so it's still okay. But it tastes very well. That's, important. The taste is good.
But to me,
we'll send you more over.
It's a nice beer. To me, it's a summer beer, but with the Gummy Bears, you could, like the tanginess, you could feel in the back of your jaws. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a classic sour.
Yeah.
Classic sour. I can't remember. I think that one's 9% alcohol.
Oh, yay.
You'll be feeling it.
Well, with all that extra sugar, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us at the end today. I really appreciate you doing it. Don, an extra special shout out to you for stepping up to co-host on short notice.
You can just send my bonus payment in.
You're right.
Wire transfer would be preferable.
I'll split all the revenue from the show 50-50 with you. How's that sound? It wouldn't cover the deposit on the bottle, but that's all right.
Yeah, really.
So I guess there's only one thing left to say. Don't drive like my brother.
And don't drive like my brother.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Okay.
You have been listening to another episode of the Outliers Inn with your hosts, Joseph Paris and David Schneider. This program is produced by the Operational Excellence Society and sponsored by Zonatech Consulting Group International.